Yeah, very excited here to have this opportunity, not only to cherish the time that we get together and to be able to ask you some personal as well as professional questions to help out active military, retired military, those who serve this great country, not only to help them out with the facts and making sure that they're aware of what's available to them for all of their sacrifice and what they've done to protect our freedoms, but also for our industry. There's only so many people that you and I and mom and our family can help out. We live in Ventura County. I know you're sharing with me some of the stats, and I'll, if you don't mind sharing that through this interview today, the type of impact it has not only on our local community, but also just kind of dispelling some of the myths that are out there, some of just the misinformation with working with military. That we hope to change and alleviate that, to share the facts, to share not only the personal experience, but you've taught first-time homebuyer workshops for over 20 years on our local base here at Port Hueneme, Point Mugu, I believe, even there where you retired out of. And you've helped educate and impact so many different families, and to have this opportunity today in an uncertain time like what we currently are living in, I think it's truly an honor and a privilege to do this. So thank you, Dad, and very excited to get into this.
Good, good. Well, hey, thanks again. This venue, I think, it can be very beneficial to not only the veterans and the active duty watches, but maybe even equally, if not more importantly, the industry as a whole. And I say that because I've gone through periods when a lot of agents were intimidated by the thought of a VA loan. I don't know if it's that much as nowadays as it used to be, but there was a period when I could not get a VA loan accepted. Part of it was inventory, thin inventory, and the agents had multiple offers. We weren't the best offer on the table probably at the time, at least in their eyes. They had a lot of inhibition about what the VA appraisal was all about, you know, kind of government bureaucratic process that could tie up a transaction. So we weren't very alluring in terms of on the receiving side. So that's all changed. That's all changed. And now the VA loan is one of the best loans out there for a couple of reasons. We'll go into some of that about the strength of the applicants. The fact their jobs are guaranteed for the most part. The fact they get paid extra money to buy these homes out in town. The strength of their offer, they got a certificate of eligibility, which will actually guarantee the initial lack of a down payment and not have to have any PMI, which makes the buyer even more likely to complete the transaction. I've had other clients in the past, and once they saw what PMI was, because no one tends to talk about that, and that I've had that stop deals, on conventional products. So, kind of getting ahead of myself, the biggest thing is awareness. So not only do we got to teach the applicants, but we really need to teach the industry the benefits and the missed opportunity that a lot of them do by not servicing these VA clients.
Right.
I'd be happy to help any agent out there to deal with this because it benefits us all as a community to get these homes to the best buyers. And sometimes the best buyers aren't being considered because they're veteran. And it's not to distinguish a discrimination as much as it is the fear of what a government product looks like on paper when you have multiple offers. So there's a lot of strength there, which we'll talk about.
Yeah, that's great. And so you hit on some very important points. The hesitation of a seller or even a listing agent in looking at a military buyer because they could have concern. Some of the things I've heard is their appraisal can come in lower because the appraiser is going to be stricter for military than they would for another loan. Can you talk a little bit about the VA appraisal just process so that those that maybe don't have the experience or it's been quite some time since the last time they picked a VA buyer, can we talk about just some recent transactions that you've had with them?
I've got two as recent as they're closing today.
Okay.
It's March 31st. We had two VA products fund yesterday. One I had the listing and the other one I had the buyer. Listing on Euclid, the buyer on Sherborne. Both vets. So I had both sides of the equation and both appraisals came in on time at value. didn't have any habitability issues, and that's the unknown fear that a lot of agents aren't even aware of what they're afraid of.
Right.
And what that means is the appraisal issue, it's not so much the value with VA in terms of the concerns. It's, is it going to get snagged up in, like I said, a bureaucratic snafu, which usually revolves around, is the house habitable? So when the VA appraiser comes out, there's no difference between them and a standard conventional appraiser. What they're looking for, though, is the VA has guidelines that says it does have to have a stove, right? It doesn't have to have an operating furnace. The water heater has to be intact. Smoke detector's got to be in place. All the same standard things that a conventional appraiser is going to do anyways. So the fear factor of, if you're a listing agent and you have a VA offer on the table, try to minimize that. And this is where I think a company like ours comes in handy. Don't ever hesitate. If you want to call me and pick my brain on a possible buyer you're considering, please do, because it makes us a better community. First of all, I think it's a good practice that we share this type of information. And secondly, we want the best buyers for our sellers. We want the strongest buyer, which may not be, as the experienced agent sees this, knows it's not always the highest offer. Sometimes the highest offer is masking other concerns. That's why they do that. They'll go a little over because they know they've got an issue deep down. So your VA applicant, who is guaranteed, so to speak, with this benefit, has a certificate of eligibility. And what that does, that precludes him from having to, him or her, having to come in with a 10, 20% down, whatever. And it guarantees the investor that if for whatever reason this thing were to default, the investor is going to get what would have been a down payment. They're going to get back to the government. So they're protected. So as long as the investor is protected, then really your seller is protected, because the seller is going to have a product that's going to close with confidence. A lot of the vets don't have, a significant amount of money to work with. Some do, many don't. We're on a very strict budget in terms of our pay. But keep in mind, if you will, they get paid an extra stipend called BAH, which is Basic Allowance for Housing. Ventura County, it can be over $3,000. An E5, E6 is over $2,000 already. So this is on top of their base pay and their allowances. So it's an additional stipend that helps them make this mortgage payment.
So
And
guaranteed.
there's a shortage. Excuse me.
Sorry about that. Guaranteed monthly money that's coming in outside of what their regular pay is, which you can find online and verify. So very easy to qualify an active military buyer. But they get additional money just strictly towards housing allowance. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's exactly what it is. They actually have a stipend for food, basic allowance, and subsistence, and they have the extra allowance for the housing. So the government realizes they don't pay them a ton of money, so they offset that by this extra benefit, and it takes the pressure off the housing, because there's a housing shortage on a lot of these bases. So just keeping in mind, in this area currently as we speak, there's roughly 35,000 veterans in Ventura County. We're losing about 1,000 a year in the county that are moving out of state for the affordability factor. At the same time, there's a projected 50,000 plus or minus. This is all off the CalVet website, these stats. There's about 50,000 roughly in the state of California that separate every year, military folks. A lot of them separate and stay here. So they're going to buy, they've gotten jobs here, they've met their spouses here, their kids are entrenched in the schools here. I'm from outside of Detroit. Where would I rather be, Detroit or Ventura County, right? The answer is pretty obvious. I'm sitting right here. Mm-hmm. So a lot of folks do that. So even though we're losing that 1,000 a year, roughly on average, we're gaining, a substantial amount that are coming to the area and that are staying. So there's a great opportunity here to build a VA kind of a niche, if you will, for your marketing if you're another agent. So it's, I think it's good practice. We share this information with agents who want to consider it. You may have missed that in the past. You don't have to be a veteran to help take care of an active duty member or a veteran. It doesn't hurt, but that's where the MRP came along. And congratulations on you earning yours recently.
Thank you.
That's a military relocation professional. It's not a terribly difficult course. You can do it over while we're on this kind of home sequester, for lack of a better term. It's a great time to knock out that certification. And I tell you, when you have an active duty member and you give them your card and you got MRP on it, you've already given them a sense of reassurance that you kind of get where they're coming from. That's a great credential to add to your repertoire, for lack of a better term.
Yeah, let's talk a little bit more about the MRP. So MRP, I just completed it. Takes 6 hours to complete. Counts towards your continuing education. So your 45 hours that are required are for those that are studying for their brokers. They get to pick electives. This satisfies that requirement as well. So there's 6 hours it takes to complete it. There's a few tests that you take. I want to say there's 3 modules and then a test at the end of that, multiple choice. But it's not overly complicated, but there's a lot of great information. And I grew up feeling that I had a pretty good understanding of the military lifestyle. Um, those that are impacted, as we talk about military, it's not just the parent that's serving, but also the kids that are involved, the kids that are moving every 2 to 3 years, which does create an opportunity for those working in the real estate industry. Many, especially in the Navy, are given orders PCSing. They PCS every 2 to 3 years and are given orders that they have to move. So if they purchased here, there's a great chance that 3 years from now, they're going to have to sell that property. And if you've properly served them and you've given them some of the tips that we're going to jump into here shortly, of what it is, what's important to know when representing somebody who's in the military, especially a retired military, when we're going to talk in regards to the funding fee, um, it's a huge opportunity to then represent them 2 to 3 years later if they get PCSed across the country, as well as knowing the challenges and the stresses of what they're going through as they come to try to relocate to our area. Usually they have a short window of time that they need to see a massive amount of properties, learn a completely new area, jumping from a very low price point typically of where they're coming from to a very high price point here that's over $500,000 in many situations for entry level. So you can imagine the amount of pressure that is on the military member as they make this move, and then the family dynamics, the kids that are in high school that have created their identities, their friends, they're leaving all that and they're moving to a completely unknown area. I